This is Listening with Franklin Livingston, and our guest is John Strange.
So I think I was early on. I asked you that you had some emotional connection. You said that's an interesting way to put it. But why? Why you got so involved in the story?
The story?
I mean, if it was just because of me, that's totally fine. And I know your particular affiliation, affection, connection with me.
Well, yeah, a lot of it had to do with that. I mean, almost all the projects that I've worked on with you so far have had some sort of cultural lesson almost embedded within them. Nothing major, just a sort of getting along, sort of
acceptance, love, and harmony.
Yeah, acceptance, love, and
Franklinism.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And you and I had sort of discussed things, and that's sort of how this developed, out of it. And because there's such a mix of people that are across seas, especially like in Doctors Without Borders and things like that, it was really easy to conceptualize two people of totally different faiths and cultures meeting, there and having something happen between them, and having something cultural prevent them from actually being together. And then it was just a matter of having a protagonist.
It's interesting you say, because I always believe we have subcultures, or our traditions or our values are rooted in the way we were raised and all, and that makes us different than the other people.
Right.
But in general, we talk about ethnic difference, cultural difference. So what about we come from the same background or same city, but we are so different? Like in parochial, when we filmed that, so your character is calling your wife and talking about the young female who's living the lecture.
Right.
She's white, you're white, but your mindsets are not the same.
Right. Totally.
The belief system is different.
Yeah. In that. Yeah. No two people think alike. That's the bottom line. And even if you still have the same, basic issues, you still come at them from your own personal point of view. You can sympathize. There's always sympathy going. If you have the same like or dislike, there's a sympathy going, but you never are both dead on, with your feelings or your thoughts, which is what's interesting. Yeah. So, that was why, as I said earlier, I needed a protagonist, because you needed to have something that the two people could circle around, once they got back to the United States. Otherwise, it just fall in love. We're not falling in love. Go their separate ways. And you would have had a plain old, what do you want to call it, rom-com or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, which it is not. I loved when Tony's his reaction video. It's on YouTube, and I saw underneath, and he has written, "My friends, complex." I love that word, because life is complex. And it's not that simple as sometimes we portray in movies and TV shows. I understand we're giving people hope, but some of us want to see more real stuff, and that's why I think a few years ago, more people were watching documentaries over narratives.
Right.
And so that's why these complex themes, and then having resolution, but not having a resolution.
Right.
Still, like, for example, the woman who plays your wife, And I've seen those kind of people in the Midwest. Because I think Tony did talk about in his reaction that, oh, it's possible a college professor. So I've seen people who are extremely Christian, more like a fundamentalist Christian, and they would leave their career or something else because they think, no, I'm pastor's wife. Right? Well, later on, when she discovers that maybe he's so extremist, but we don't know whether or not she'll join her academic profession or not.
Right. It's
kept
up in the air.
that, yes,
Yeah.
Open-ended, and which I personally like.
Yeah, I do too. You know, and you don't know what he's going to do either. Is he going to, you know, how involved is he going to stay?
Right.
You know, in what he's been doing for the past probably 20, you know, maybe 30 years, or is he, you know, how much is he going to step back from it if indeed that's what he's going to do? So.
Because what if he retires after? Right now, he thinks like, oh, people need me.
Right.
But he might quit it more resigning, instead of resigning, retirement fashion. Like, okay, we have a new guy actually. Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So great. So I want to go back to your Brooklyn apartment.
Brooklyn.
But you didn't tell us, how you met Carol.
Carol was a blind date.
Trend is, but I want to know the detail, which I remember vaguely, but the way you were like, oh, we used to do this and that, and I was like, okay, so there wasn't swiping left and right?
No. This was a thing called New York Singles Dateline. And what you did is, if you were a man looking for a woman or a woman looking for a man, what you did is you recorded a message, a tape, and it went on to the New York Singles Dateline for either a male or female. And then anybody who listened, who liked your voice and, you know, liked how you came across, would then write a letter and send it into the offices. Okay, and then they would forward the letters onto you. And then you would read the letters and decide if you wanted to get in touch with anybody that responded to them.
And didn't you say like there were, I totally forgot, 25 people? It's been years we talked about that.
20-something people that responded to mine. And you know, I went out with a whole bunch of them. You know, I think I went out with more than once. Most of them were just we got together for cocktails, and you know, nothing, you know, clicked. Whether it was, you know, personality wise or you know, physically, you know, just they weren't attracted to me or whatever, or I wasn't attractive to them. Who knows? You know. I was a lot thinner back then, quite frankly.
Like skinnier?
I was in really good shape.
Oh, then. Good shape.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they didn't like you.
I was like in my 160s back then. That was probably the best shape of my life, was back in my 30s, early to mid 30s, late 20s, early to mid 30s. Then I had 2 kids. But Carol was actually the last letter, and I had put it off because I just wasn't quite sure of, and don't ask me what it was in the letter that she wrote, but I just wasn't quite sure. And so we met at this place which no longer exists in the village. It's very interesting. It was an antique store. And at the very back of the store was a glass, a 2-door glass front armoire with a mirror. And you walked through the armoire into a restaurant bar hidden in the back. You had to know about
what street?
It was just north of 12th, just north of 12th.
No.
And 10th Avenue. And I knew about it because somebody who I went to HP Studios knew about it, took me there for drinks one night. And it was very interesting. So we met there. We met for drinks, and then the bar was up top, and then you walk down several steps, and the restaurant was actually in a outdoor space that had a glass, roof on it. And we had dinner. We hit it off. We went our separate ways afterwards. She thought I was going to be very weird because at the time I owned a long, down to like the top of my calf, blue leather overcoat.
Oh, okay. Was it cold? What was the weather like?
It was winter. It was like 2 weeks before Christmas, actually. And it was reversible. So one side was suede, the other side was leather. And so she was saying, "Oh man, I'm meeting this guy with this weird blue, calf length, overcoat. Who the hell wears that?" Yeah. And we kind of hit it off. And at the end of, I said, "Would you like to get together again?" She said, "Yes." So the second date was my New Year's Eve party at my dad's house. It was a weird second date, I guess, in retrospect. Sounds, And
that was in New Jersey.
Yeah, and that was in Saddle River, New Jersey. My parents had moved back to Saddle River. My mother had died, and my dad had remarried at that saves the game. She wound up moving in, and 3 years after we met, we got married. The apartment she moved in to meet with me in Brooklyn, the apartment went co-op. We bought it for, I think, $50,000. Sold it about a year later for $150,000. And 3 years ago, we looked up on the market to see what it was worth, and it was worth about $1.35 million. So
it's really expensive. Yeah.
But that was 3 years ago. 40 years since we had moved out of there.
So your wedding was more of a religious ceremony?
No.
Sorry.
We got married.
I know she comes from, if you're comfortable sharing. Yeah,
she's Jewish. Interestingly enough, I married two women, they both are Jewish. Don't ask me how that came about. But no, actually, we got married in the middle of a hurricane. We were going down to the Justice of the Peace in Brooklyn to get married. And we managed to get there, wind and rain, and there's all these people waiting to get married there. And the Justice of the Peace doesn't show up. And we finally get a message saying, "Oh, a tree fell down across his driveway. He's not going to make it."
Right. Sorry, I'm laughing, but
it's
a
really
superstitious person might have thought, "Oh my God, that's a sign."
I know, right? So then a little while later they come in and say, "But the Justice of the Peace in Manhattan got into the office. If you want to all go into Manhattan, he'll perform the ceremony." So you get all these people going from the courthouse in Brooklyn to the subway, in pouring rain, in high winds. I took one step outside the front door and my umbrella just went inside out and flew away. And we were all bedraggled and stuff when we walked into Manhattan. And we got married in Manhattan.
Oh, cool.
And the funny thing is by mid-afternoon that afternoon, the hurricane had gone past us. And it was like, sunlight. And we did lox and bagels and stuff with our friend who had come, to be our witness. And then we had a ceremony, not a ceremony, but we had a reception that weekend. I think the next day we had it at a hotel, the Emerson Hotel on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, that we put together ourselves, which was really cool. We found a guitar player in the subway who was playing classical music one day on waiting, and we wound up waiting for a long time for a subway train to come in. He was playing beautifully, and we asked him if he ever plays weddings or other things, and he said yes. So we hired him to play our wedding. And everybody was saying how nice it was to be at a wedding where you didn't have all this loud DJ and band music, and you were forced to watch everybody dancing and stuff like that. So the wedding was really, really nice, quite frankly, and everybody had a good time. You know. So, and that is 40 years ago this year. We will have been married.
That's great.
Went by fast.
Yeah. So now you were married and you decided not to act. You want to talk more about that?
Well, it was, I was still doing acting when we first met. And then we had a kid. And, you know, I was still doing some acting. In fact, I formed what it was. I joined this group of other actors where we would get together once a week and we would perform scenes in front. It was like a formal group. Actually, we got together and performed scenes. And I was doing that, and then we decided to incorporate as a 501c3 corporation, and we got
for profit.
Yeah, project. We got into a kind of internal battle as to how the direction that we thought the group should go, and it was me and the guy who originated the group. And I thought we should try to go as a group that actually tried to put on plays, you know, and he was thinking more, you know, of just naming our group and just staying as basically just getting together and, you know, more just getting together and rehearsing and, you know, practicing and things like that. And I ultimately won out and he left, which actually worked out anyway because his boyfriend had AIDS and was becoming more and more sickly. And we incorporated as a group called 5 Men, 5 Women, which was an ordeal. We became a 501c3 corporation. And I ran that for about 4 years or so. And that during that time, that's when we moved from Brooklyn to Fair Lawn, New Jersey, where we bought a house. My son was almost 3 years old, Elliot. And we moved because we were living in Prospect Park. It was starting to get more and more affluent. And you literally could not go to the playground and not have your kids waiting in line to play on any of the playground stuff. And I said, we need grass. So we actually wound up moving about 8 miles away from where I grew up. 4.5 miles away from where I was born, actually, and 8 miles from where I lived. And then National Endowment for the Arts. That's when we had our first big recession back in the 80s. And National Endowment for the Arts just totally dried up. And we couldn't get grants. It's very hard to sustain. You know, a theater group that's starting out, you know, when you can't go into an off-Broadway theater, and you're only going into 60-seat theaters. You can't keep it going. So we ran out of money. And we had to let it go by the wayside. And that's when I stopped acting. After that. And periodically I've gone back into it a few years back, right around the time I first met you. I was doing a lot of background work and a lot of independent commercials and stuff like that. And got kind of close a couple of times to getting, you know, a couple of major things. But people stepped in and from the outside in both cases and sort of said, no, you have to use one of my people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not this guy.
Yeah,
whether
unfortunately it happens.
Yeah, you know, I had one director, I did a non-union commercial, and then he saw me, he said, I want this guy. I want this guy in my commercial. And the casting director said, well, he's not one of my people. And he said, I want him. And she says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll audition him. And if he does well, then you can use him. And she sabotaged the hell out of the audition. You know, she had me doing stuff. And I knew from the minute she told me what to start doing that there was no way in hell that I was going to get past. And sure enough.
Talk about abusing the power.
Yeah, abuse of the power. And it was too bad because it was a national commercial. It wasn't regional or anything like that. And I think that really would have gotten me on the path. That was extremely disappointing. Not the first one to have that happen too, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You know, but you know, and
but
then
you're still a very happy man. You were calm whenever I saw you, met you, even through your serious health conditions, and you're very contented. And you always, the way I see you, you have always put your family first. And
tell my wife that.
Is it okay to tell
sure,
that you have been cooking? You're a great cook, and you cook every night.
Every night.
Yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I do. I love to cook.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think a lot of why I haven't acted is because I put the family first. You know, instead of going out and doing stuff at night, you know, trying to do plays or, you know, things like that, I've come home. You know,
which is great. I think that the sacrifice that you have made makes you stronger, and but to me you're an inspiration. But I think it makes you just unique and different, because I don't see you stressing out. Oh my God, a lot of people like stress out. I want to just add to my resume. That's my resume. And I personally don't understand why, because that particular accomplishment does not give you peace and doesn't give any sort of gratification or reward, internal reward. So why you ran after that? So I've seen a couple of people who have just a few credits, and they're happy with that because they believe that their job was to make a difference, which they did. It wasn't about how many stars it got on your shoulders.
Well, I hooked up with you, which I think so far, I think it's been a great combination, you know, so far. You know, I'd always like to do more work with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, there's a part of me that feels guilty when I start trying to go out and getting parts. You know, oh, I'm not being home, you know, enough. I'm not doing this enough. But there always comes a time where I've stepped back from it and then gotten back into it again for a while. The funny thing is, every time I get back into it, I'm better than I was when I left. I'm more relaxed. I'm more observant. I'm more creative, you know. And a lot of times, you mentioned earlier that I'm a writer. A lot of the times when I've stepped back, the creative part of me doesn't want to stay hidden. And so I wind up doing things like writing scripts or writing novels. I've written 4 novels. You know, I haven't gotten them published yet. I got real close a couple of times. You know, and I've written the screenplay that you and I actually did, and I wrote 3 shorts that we've
Mhm.
done. And I wrote a screenplay of one of my books,
Mhm.
which I want to try to get going. And
You won awards too.
yeah, I was first runner-up in a national
Mhm.
prize for the screenplay
Mhm.
for that book. And actually, I got a prize for the book itself.
Mhm.
I got a runner-up prize. And I was actually told that this one producer would work with me. I just have to make one character more. I can't remember. Asian is the correct. Is that the correct?
Asian?
Middle East? I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I switch it over from. So I
That's
have
what
to
I'm saying.
modify it. But yeah, I never know what the correct vernacular is. these days.
Depending,
Yeah.
it depends what it is
Yeah.
you want, but
You know?
yeah, keeping that diversity alive.
Right.
Yeah.
And he says it is eminently producible for like the $3 to $4 million mark, and would play very well in the Eastern market.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to change the script on that now. But I'm also currently been dropping notes on another idea. I have an emerging detective series that I've written 2 novels in, and I've also got notes and stuff that I started to develop. for a
This
third
is
book.
Maxie's.
This is Maxie's Gym, the book and the playwright, the script that I wrote. So, you know, because once again, I haven't done anything for a couple of years. You and I haven't worked together except for a couple of little things for about a year and a half or so now. And so the bug is, you know, my head's.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about your travel. After then, you were just on a cruise.
Yeah, my wife.
Traveling the world.
You know, we sold our house and we made some money. My wife goes, "We're going to go on cruises."
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So,
I mean, I was like, you would send a text and say, "Oh, we are in Australia, and now we're flying back to California." So I was like, "Oh my
Australia,
god,
New
how to get
Zealand.
hold of you?"
we're going to Scotland in April.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Cruise around Scotland. We just canceled a cruise. We were going to go through the Panama Canal, but my granddaughter was born sick.
Yeah.
So kind of tragic. So we canceled that. That'll be next year or whatever the hell goes on now. But yeah, and then we're going to slow down anyway. Yeah.
What is the biggest joy you received while being on these cruises, traveling the world?
Seeing new places. Well, you travel
Yes.
a lot.
I don't travel on a cruise, but yes, I try to.
Well, you know, I personally, I have issues. I have back issues,
Yes.
which you know,
Yes.
and I'm actually going to make an appointment to go see. There's an institute in New York that's supposedly very, very good with back, issues now, because I'm starting to bow over.
Oh, okay.
And actually with a cane. I bought this great cane. I'll show you later on. It's in my car in South, because I just took a cruise around South Africa, and I lost the cane that I brought with me, and I bought one in South Africa that was handmade with all these South African colors and stuff. It's really cool looking. It's like a piece of art. But what was I saying?
Oh, you were talking about that you love to travel and see new places.
You know,
what about food? Because I know you know how to cook a lot of international foods.
Yeah.
I know that. I don't know if
a
lot of people know that.
Yeah, I try. You know, mostly we wind up eating on the ship, but every port you go into on a ship, every country you go into on a ship, they usually have stuff from the culture that you're at, and I usually try that, which is good. Some of it's successful, some of it is not. But we also cruise on some fairly good cruise lines.
Yeah.
So we're getting some pretty good food, you know, instead of the low end stuff. But you know, partly the reason, you know, once again, I want to do more land-based stuff, you know, where we rent a car and we drive around. My wife doesn't like my driving.
Because she's a wife.
Yeah,
that's
she's
why.
a wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I, quite frankly,
she's going to watch this, you know.
I know. You know, and I do. I'm an aggressive driver. You know, I have to admit.
But you're not a dangerous driver. At least, like, I have sat with you.
You've sat with me when I've driven, and I've said, if I drive too fast, let me know.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's a little. Also, I don't know how the cars were in 60s or 70s or 80s, but sometimes I remember a professor of us told us that he was like, "Hey, when I was young, I had hair, and now he does not." And
Right.
and I had, I think he said, was Tang, maybe in late 60s.
Oh, Tang, yeah.
So the thing is, the driving style and all could also come from your background, how you learned driving or what kind of vehicle is your favorite, right? And now cars are not that. You mean what's the word? Like, for example, the classic car we use in roommates.
Yes.
That's Impala 65.
Right.
So that car is so heavy and the metal
massive.
Yeah.
Right.
So if I drive my newer cars with the same style, it's going to be different.
Oh yeah, totally different. I mean,
Yeah.
Uh,
Speaking of roommates, sorry, I interrupted again.
Sure.
Your season is coming up next when you play that general guy.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'll have to look for that. I've always owned, almost always. My very first car was a '57 Volkswagen Beetle, which was my dad's yellow. That I learned how to drive stick shift. We had a driveway just long enough that I could get it into second gear before I crashed into the garage door. So that's how I learned to drive. Then my second car was a Fiat 124 Sport Coupe.
Oh, cool.
Okay, which I looked up online to see what it looked like yesterday, as a matter of fact, so I forgot. Then my third car was a Mercury Capri, which I looked up online to see what it was like, and I didn't realize it was a European car that got brought into the United States under the Mercury Lincoln line, but it was manufactured in Europe. So it was totally a European car, just like Fiat was, and looked a lot like the Fiat. And then I owned a Lancia, which was Italian, which looked kind of like the other two cars, and they were all sports cars. Then I owned a 65 Pontiac Bonneville. Oh, wow. With push button.
Oh, push button.
On the dashboard, push button.
I have seen only from the outside.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to these car shows.
Right.
So, yeah, I haven't seen it from inside.
But the vast majority of cars that I've owned have been sports cars. You know, I mean, you saw, not really sports cars, but like you saw, I had the Hyundai Sonata sports model.
Yes.
And now I've got the Kia K5, you know, sports car. And I had the, I had the SR5 GTS, which you never saw. That
no,
was
I didn't.
The Mazda SR5 GTS, which was, you know, definitely a sports car. What I had before that? Oh, before that I had a.
Okay, no, that was a loaner car when you know, we filmed Recluse.
Yes.
So you brought a car, but I think that they loaned you.
I had a loaner car because
maintenance or accident or something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was when was that when the guy rear-ended me? No, that was another one. No, that was when they broke into my car. That was that one. But then I had, you know, I also had a Celica and a RAV4 in the middle there.
Car. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had the very first RAV4 version. Wouldn't recommend it.
You have been a car guy.
I had lots of cars. But mostly, I would say the vast majority are sports cars or sport-ish cars.
So that's why maybe you like the land and all that.
Yeah,
I think now. So for me, so when I go to different countries, I think I just want to chill, so I don't really care about driving. And the other thing is, my interest is always in talking to people. And these days, I've learned to use the app, so like say something.
Yeah, isn't that great?
And then it speeds, and then it's a little interesting. You have to have patience, I think. Everybody can't do that, and I was surprised. I was like, okay, It takes literally 10 to 20 seconds more. And
I said that to Carol the other day. Is I have a translator program on my phone. All I got to do is go up and ask somebody. We went to NJPAC the other day for a concert, and a guy from China came up, did not speak any English, and he comes up to me and, on his phone, he goes, "Can you please tell me where the elevator is?" And I went, "Over there." He goes, "Yeah, thank you."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, it's the first time I've seen somebody use a translator on their phone. It was great."
No, I frequently use
it all the time.
I was in actually. This is something interesting to me at least. I was in Malaysia, and a couple of friends were there too. And one of they have different kind of trains, metro type. Right. So we were in a train, and there was an Asian dude. I couldn't tell, but he was asking which stop to get off, and he did not get off at that stop. And I said, "Dude, that's your stop. You should get off." And he wasn't fluent in English, but he said, "No, I'll get off at the next stop." And he was very nervous, so you could tell he wasn't normal. And I asked him, "Hey, where are you from?" and all that. He was like, "Yeah, I'm from China. This is my first time traveling abroad. I'm really scared of losing my flight." Right? I was like, "It's okay." No, I had no clue how far the airport was. And I asked him, "When's your flight?" And he said, 5:30. And in my head, I'm calculating it's only 2:30. It should be fine, even if this train takes 30 minutes straight. Right. And I was like, "Yeah, it's like 30 minutes away. And you shouldn't be late, and you have enough time," and all this. So that made him feel better. Yeah, that's what I really like doing. That. Yeah, if you could just help someone out, making their day easier. Yeah. So yeah,
I would like to talk to more people. Don't really. Carol's not so much into that.
It also depends where you're at. Yeah. I think if I walk into New Jersey Mall and begin talking to people, might freak out. Well, yeah. Because we don't live in a culture where here at the East Coast, it's just like different, because people might think, "What do you want? Why are you talking to me?" So it's a different kind of thing. Say you do that in a small town, Midwest, it might be different. Might be. So I try to find those opportunities when I go abroad. And I think I also use some judgment there. There are people, I have learned this, people who are extremely wealthy, it doesn't matter what country they are in, they'll be less friendly. They carry a particular attitude or arrogance or whatever, right? Yeah. And so sometimes you are not that wealthy. That's why I'm not wealthy at all. I'm not saying that you're not that friendly. But people who are more down to earth, there are people who are wealthy and down to earth. Right. And those kind of people, they just exhibit something that you can disconnect. Well, there's that monetary sword. This is the problem with getting older. It's belief that the money itself makes them more important. Which it really doesn't. It just allows you to do more things. Mm-hmm. But being able to do more things doesn't make you more important. Mm-hmm. You're not any more special. Yes. And that's the maturity a lot of us don't attain when we should have attained. Well, it's like I constantly watch, you'll hear like people are selling their house out in California, and would start selling house in 14 bedrooms, mm-hmm. And 14 bathrooms, mm-hmm. and a movie theater and a swimming pool and blah 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 blah. And I'm going to myself, who needs that? Yeah, exactly. I mean, would I like to have a swimming pool? I probably wouldn't use it that much. And would I like to have a theater room? I would like to have a theater room. Mm-hmm. But actually, you don't need, a theater room for 20 people, mm-hmm. Or anything like that. And I don't need my own bowling alley, and I don't need, a guest house for 14 people or anything like that. And I don't understand why, rich people need these big, I don't think
houses.
they need. I think it's a want.
Yeah, or want these,
It just feeds into their ego.
and I'm so, when I hear, some people, that they just live not so much differently than we do, and they're worth tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
I go, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's really what it's all about. Because the bottom line is, and this is what my theory. If you're rich, if you're a celebrity, like Oscars, people venerate actors. An actor is no different than you or I are. Acting is a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Director is a job. The only difference between their job and our job is that they're in the public eye,
Right.
or they make a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
But are they any more special than us?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, he's on the right. Oh my God, look who that is. If someone's like, oh, look, he's standing right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have done acting. You and I have met actors, well-known international stars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are they, when you actually get a chance to speak to them, any different than you and I are? No.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody who doesn't get an opportunity to do that thinks that they're gods. And
it was just so sad. Actually, a friend of mine called day before yesterday, and from California, and she was like, "Do you watch the Oscars?" I was like, "No, so and so, their movie won an Oscar." I said, "So what?"
Yeah.
The dude does not have any respect in my eyes, because my friend used to work with this guy. They were colleagues here in New York City. And she used to tell all these stories that this guy, how bad and arrogant and abusive this guy was to the other people. So I have that image. Now, winning an Oscar, does that change that? No, because to me, that person is not a good human being. He's not even a human, right?
Right.
So what's the point? I mean, if this award makes a difference, this feeds into his ego, might be good for him,
right?
And so that's where I'm at. Yeah,
I'm that way too. The best thing is when you meet somebody who tons of other people venerate, and you can sit down and have a normal conversation with them. It's great.
Or what have you done to make this world a better place?
Right.
In addition to buying a mansion or just like
having 14 sports cars,
yeah, money on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
money on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having desire is not bad, but the thing is, like, when you get, like, if somebody's I don't understand this thing. Like, can you crave for a taste that you're gonna fly out in your own personal jet to France and get a dessert from a particular bakery? Right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's being crazy. To me, that's like misusing or abusing your resources. Because when you learn to be contented in the things you have, you can share some of the resources for other good things too. And I'm not talking about charity, even like your own health and well-being, because your well-being is still connected to other people.
Right.
And you're part of this whole community, and you share. Like, for example, the air, oxygen, right? That's why I got these plants. So these minor things matter.
Right. Absolutely.
And that creates then the whole globe suffer with climate change or less of an oxygen or pollution or all that. But I don't know. People do those crazy things because they can.
Because they can. That's the key, is because they can. But because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And to kill that want, I think, starts with your your ego.
Right.
And that's the monster that can really get you. Because a lot of these people, when they lose money, then they can't survive.
They can't survive.
Because they have spoiled themselves, or they have been on the things they thought will always remain with them. But in our profession, that's another thing too. You never know. You might not get any work for the next 2 years or 5 years or
10 years.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that have won an Academy Award and made tons of money, and then it's been 5 years, you know,
Mhm.
and they've gone through all the money,
Yeah.
you know, because they bought a big house and they bought a couple of cars, and you know, they had some extravagances, and you know, all they got offered was the same roles over and over and over again, you know, and you know, who wants to play the same role over and over and over again? Or the scripts all suck, you know, or you don't want to work with a particular director because he's got the wrong reputation or something like that. So you don't know. I mean, an Oscar, there's more people because of getting an Oscar have done worse than because they, you know, than have done better. So it's just one day recognition. That's really what it comes down to.
I have lost interest in awards and stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason is seeing the same people again and again on the TV screen.
Mhm.
I just I think I want something different. So I don't watch awards anymore. And then, I don't know, a lot of little projects don't really inspire me.
I think I watched the Golden Globes because they're kind of fun watching the audience. The Academy Awards I got into, our next door neighbor for until COVID used to have an Academy Awards party. And everybody who came would put a vote in for who they thought was going to win.
Yeah.
And we put it into the pile.
I've been to one of those parties.
Right. And whoever got the best, you know, won everything that was in, you know, the booty there.
Yeah.
And so I would do tons of research, and I held the record over the 40 years for the most wins.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
So they go, John, how come? Oh, I just looked you.
Okay, next time I distribute a movie, I'm gonna try to get your research done.
Okay.
So I know when to distribute it.
I would just go to all the different sites and write down all the films and all the different categories and say, this one voted for this one voted for this, and whichever one after like 6 or 7 different sites had the most, I put down as my choice. And I'd say, you know, I think I won like, I don't know how many I won, but I had the most.
Cool.
You know, over all the years. And then the pandemic hit and she stopped, and you know, she hasn't started up again since then. So, but they were always fun. We never stayed for the whole thing. You know, Carol always wanted to go home, and then we'd finish at home. You know, but it's just it's fun to see the spectacle, I guess, is what's fun about it. But other than that, by the end of the night when I go home or go to sleep, I can't remember who won what, quite frankly, except for maybe a couple of big prizes.
I think that also depends. See, if you have a very emotional connection with the project and you're really like looking forward to it, going to awards and all that, or you have a celeb you were really looking for, I don't know if, at least I don't feel that way toward the current lot.
I feel occasionally something really resonates. You know, there's usually one movie or one actor I'm really, really, really rooting for. Like in a year, like I was really rooting for Demi Moore this year because I think she's been, you know, an outstanding actress and has done some brilliant work, and she's just never been, you know, recognized. And I really thought this was going to be her year, and it wasn't. Well, she got to go Globe, but I really thought she should have won the Oscar. And then there's years where, you know, I really rooted for movies. Like I really was rooting for Parasite when Parasite won, you know, and that was an underdog. for, almost until the very, very end. And then it just went bananas.
Right.
But that's I like watching for those particular reasons. This year I hadn't paid too much attention. We hadn't seen that many movies. The only,
you were mostly traveling.
Yeah. The only one I was really rooting for was what's her name? Gaston. Except she kind of sabotaged herself with the earlier, emails and things that she said. But did you see that movie?
No.
Perez, Amelia Perez. It is odd, and brilliant at the same time, because it's like opera, ballet, dance, mobster movie all at the same time. And really, really, really a one-of-a-kind movie. And I was really rooting for it, and for her, because she did a brilliant job. She actually played both roles. Everybody thinks somebody else played the gangster as the man. That's actually her playing it.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Which I thought was amazing.
Yeah, I do.
So, but then again, she probably knows how to act like a man, because at one point in her life she was a man. So there's probably a lot of that left over. So, but yeah. So every year there's a certain amount of passion played toward one or two, aspects of a certain ward. But I don't just go, oh my God,
some people are like that. Yeah.